Dallas Cowboys find themselves in a couple of conundrums. One of them is kind of about the way you feel about a coaching move. The other one is kind of about the way they feel about a coaching move. Mike Fisher, reporting on your Dallas Cowboys in Frisco or thereabouts. Let's talk about the first phenomenon as it relates to the word cohesion. And my friends at the Dallas Morning News have written about this, that Mike McCarthy is now assembling a more cohesive defensive coaching staff than he had last year. Interesting, because number one, why wasn't last year's defensive coaching staff cohesive? Isn't Mike McCarthy the one that put it together? He handpicked his coordinator in a close friend, Mike Nolan. He handpicked the secondary coach in his former player, Al Harris. He handpicked the linebacker coach in Scott McCurley, who's his guy from Green Bay. He's the one that hired Mo Lindquist. He's the one that hired Jim Tomsula. Why was there a lack of cohesion? And how does that all of a sudden change? Because this year, Mike McCarthy is picking a defensive staff with cohesion. Well, didn't you do that last year? And when you pick a coaching staff that doesn't have cohesion, can't that mean that, well, all I'm doing is I'm not picking a bunch of yes men. I'm not picking my drinking buddies, and I'm not picking my cronies. Because if that's what you're doing this year, that means that last year you picked your drinking buddies and your cronies. Here's the truth about cohesion on the defensive coaching staff. Did it find itself lacking in 2020? Yep. Why? Because Jim Tomsula's a bad guy? No. Mike Nolan's a bad guy? Nope. Scott McCurley's a bad guy? Nope. Al Harris, bad guy? Nope. There was a lack of cohesion on the 2020 Dallas Cowboys defensive staff because they sucked. And they went 6-10. And this is what happens to a group in your profession and in mine when you go 6-10. If my radio station's ratings went 6-10, guess what? We wouldn't have very good cohesion. Why? Well, because I'd start saying, well, it was his fault. And he'd start saying it was his fault and my fault and your fault. There isn't a coaching staff in the history of the NFL that goes 6-10 and is cohesive. Why would you be cohesive at 6-10? It's somebody's fault. And it's human nature for you to say two things in whatever order. One, I wonder if it's my fault. And two, I wonder if it's your fault. So a lack of cohesion on the 2020 Cowboys defensive staff, yes. It's arguably the worst defense in Cowboys history. They should lack cohesion. They should be mad. They should be finger pointing at themselves. And then once they realize, oh, it wasn't me, then go ahead and finger point at everybody else. Completely natural. You're humans. Fixed this year? No offense to the Dallas Morning News. How do you know it's fixed this year? Listen, I don't even know who's all on the coaching staff yet, and neither does the Dallas Morning News. I believe that Lindquist is gone. I believe that Harris is staying. I believe they're trying to bring in George Edwards in some role. In fact, I know they are. And I don't know what they're doing with Scott McCurley. I know ownership would like to keep Leon Lett. We don't yet know that that's been finalized. We know that they're interviewing at least 3 defensive line coaches. I don't know which one it is. What if one of the defensive line coaches that they hire is a jackass? Then guess what? There might be a lack of cohesion. Furthermore, the defensive coordinator hire of Dan Quinn goes outside of Mike McCarthy's circle. They've never worked together before. What if they're not cohesive? As can happen in any relationship, business or otherwise. If you've ever broken up with your girlfriend, who you loved, you understand lack of cohesion. You broke up with your wife. You don't think, because of conflicts with your wife, the mother of your children, you don't think there could be a conflict between Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn? Or Dan Quinn and Al Harris? Dan Quinn's never worked with Al Harris. Dan Quinn's never worked with Leon Lett. They're probably going to hire a defensive line coach who has worked for Dan Quinn. And then we know that Joe Witt Jr. is going to be the passing game coordinator and secondary coach. He's worked with Dan Quinn and worked with McCarthy. That seems like a cohesive guy, but there's no guarantees here. I'm not trying to tear down the report. I'm just trying to tell you factually what I know from 40 years of covering the NFL. If the Dallas Cowboys go 6-10 next year, guys on the defensive staff won't like each other. And they'll start to wonder, now who's going to get fired? And some of them will get fired. If they go 6-10 again next year, people on this staff will get fired again. And McCarthy will not be able to go to Jerry and Steve and say, well, I know we went 6-10, but didn't you read the Dallas Morning News? We got a lot of cohesion. Then there's the issue of Kellen Moore, who has cohesion on this offensive staff. They didn't have that problem on the offensive staff, to my knowledge. Wonder why? Because the offense doesn't feel like it really went 6-10. The offensive coaches feel like, listen, we lost Dak Prescott, and we still did okay. Of course, on offense, they didn't change the system very much, and they didn't change the terminology at all, unlike what they did on defense. And of course, now they're unfixing that. So now, speaking of human nature, Kellen Moore's name pops up as somebody that the Philadelphia Eagles are interested in for a head coaching job. And now let's talk about human nature. About a month ago, the idea of Kellen Moore being special was something that people argued about. Now, inside the NFL, people thought, listen, he's extremely bright. He's born for this. And he did a good job, considering the fact that he didn't have his quarterback. That's the opinion of, but that's not everybody's opinion. I bet you if we would have done a survey here a month ago, it might have been 50-50 on whether or not Kellen Moore, whether or not it's important to keep. Then the Boise job comes up. And I think he pretty much took it, by the way. And then either they discovered that he didn't have all his ducks in a row, or he discovered they didn't have all their ducks in a row, one or the other. So they unplug from each other, and he stays, and he gets a new 3-year contract as the offensive coordinator in Dallas. But when the Boise State thing was happening, instead of being 50-50 on whether or not we liked Kellen, I think it went to about 75-25. Oh no, we don't want to lose Kellen to Boise. Now, there was still 25% of you, I'm just guessing at a number, still 25% of you that are going, if you want to go to Boise, go to Boise. The hell with you. But it went from 50-50 on whether we liked him to 75-25, like him, don't like him. And now comes the idea that the Eagles are interested in Kellen Moore. And now, human nature being what it is, cohesion being what it is, it's almost 100% among Cowboy Nation saying, you can't let him leave. Can't we match? Can't we keep him? Could you give him more money? Can't you block him? You can't block him. You can't block an offensive coordinator from moving up to head coach. Can't block it. He could not want it. He could think I'm 32. Maybe I'm not ready for that. But that's probably not what's going to happen. What I do think is going to happen is that Howie Roseman, the general manager there, who's represented by the agent Bob Lamont, will ask Bob Lamont, who should I hire? And they will hire another client of Bob Lamont. And I think Brian Daboll, the Bills offensive coordinator, is the most sensible name there among a handful of them. We've discussed here how Lincoln Riley got the phone call. And clearly, I think it's pretty clear, Lincoln Riley hasn't said yes. Otherwise, they wouldn't also be calling Kellen Moore. If Lincoln Riley says yes, I think they'd go ahead and hire him. But isn't it interesting how you only really start missing something when it's threatened to be taken away from you. We take it for granted. We take Kellen Moore for granted. Hey, he's a Cowboy offensive coordinator. He's 31, he's 32. He likes it here. He played here. He's not going anywhere. Oh, he's going to Boise? Well, I don't really want that to happen. What? He's going to the Eagles. Oh, that's an outrage. Jerry, do something. Human nature and cohesion and coaching. We will keep you abreast of all things going on with Cowboys coaching staff, all things now with Cowboys free agency and the draft. And we've got some really interesting tidbits on the draft coming up, including what would you do at 10 if a future Hall of Fame tight end, maybe, was there to be drafted. Thanks for hitting that bell. Thanks for telling your friends. Fish in Frisco with the Cowboys. Out.